When I take a look around, I can't help but think, what are we being exposed to nowadays, left, right, and center? What's being hyped? Certainly this, definitely a lot of this, and a lot of whatever the hell this is. But it's 2025, and you know what nobody is talking about anymore? The YSL Y line from Yves Saint Laurent. Well, I'm here today to give you the 3 members of the line that are worth buying, and at the end, I'm going to go over my favorite. If that interests you, stick around and check out this video. This line at one point was one of the most talked about fragrance lines in all of male perfumery. The hype has certainly died down quite considerably in the past few years. YSL came out with their Myself line. That seems to be stealing a lot of thunder recently. But yeah, the point is the Y line was like really widely talked about in the not too distant past. So I went ahead and I tested all of them and I came up with the best 3, the 3 that I consider to be the ones worth purchasing. And at the end, I'm going to go over my favorite one, my #1 recommendation. So let's start off with the original EDP. Now this is not the EDP Intense. This one here, main notes in the beginning, we get apple and ginger. In the mid, there's some sage and juniper. Drying down with tonka bean and amberwood. The opening of this fragrance, characteristic green apple and ginger. Sweet, fruity, but not in a cloying type of sweet, fruity way. Green apple mixed with that zingy, kind of spicy, citric ginger. Just an unmistakable opening. Very recognizable, very fresh, very zingy, and fruity. That green apple, man, really set this thing apart when it came out. It does take qualities from the original EDT, and there are definitely similarities to the other members of this line, but really, EDP, in my opinion, it's the one in the line that does that apple, citrusy, zingy, spicy ginger opening the best. I really like it. It's nice and concentrated without going too cloying. Maintains a freshness, but also that kind of sweet depth. Just a really interesting opening. In the mid, definitely some of that sage and juniper. So we're gonna get an aromatic green sage, a little bit of a woodiness too coming from that sage, and some juniper, which is going to kind of give this like a fizzy, effervescent type of quality, gin and tonic, that kind of thing. I definitely get a little bit of that in the mid. This dries down with that amberwood. Now the amberwood is a constant in this line. Amberwood gonna give this that sweet kind of bubblegummy, yet woody, and maybe even slightly sweetly aquatic scent. Anyway, every single member of the line has amberwood in it to differing degrees. The EDP definitely has some concentrated amberwood in the bottom. It's sweet, definitely a little bit woody, but there's also that blue shower gel characteristic that kind of hangs around everything else. Get a little bit of that sweet, vanillic, kind of nutty, maybe slightly powdery tonka bean in the dry down as well. All in all, this one here encapsulates that YSL Y DNA so well. I find it's much better than the Eau Fraiche, for example. I find it's much better than the original EDT. And I say that because it takes those fresh notes and just, amplifies them, makes them more concentrated, adds a definite hit of sweetness without making it cloying. And I just mean that it's going to be a really interesting scent profile that will last you all day, because the performance on this is quite good for an aquatic shower gel type fragrance. Awesome performance. I don't even need to talk about versatility. This, as well as every single other member of the line, super versatile. This one here, very, very youthful. I will say that. There's nothing really mature about this one. Other members of the line have more mature characteristics, definitely. This one here, totally youthful. But at the same time, I don't think it's specifically just for teenagers. Myself, and I know people even older than I am, this knows no age limits. There's no maximum limit, there's no minimum. Anybody can get enjoyment out of this. If you're looking for like a energetic, fresh, yet sweet fragrance for the warmer weather, ooh, this is fantastic. It's hard to beat YSL Y EDP. But have I spoken too soon? Because Y Le Parfum 2025 has entered the room. Let's find out. This one here, bergamot and ginger in the opening. A good amount of pine and sage in the mid. And this dries down with geranium, amberwood, and cedar. So, Le Parfum 2025, keep in mind this is not the original Le Parfum. This is a totally different scent profile in my opinion. We smell this. The main difference we're going to get between this and the Eau de Parfum that I've just gone over is the lack of apple in this one, but it's still fruity because we get some bergamot. The bergamot starts off very juicy and sweet with a little bit of that citric characteristic as well, yes. And we definitely get that zingy, spicy, fresh, almost citric vibe coming from the ginger as well. This starts to differentiate itself even more from the EDP in the mid because the pine in this one is definitely turned up. I get a balsamic kind of smell. The same thing I get, it's sweet balsamic, maybe a little bit lemony, kind of citric, maybe a little bit aromatic as well. It smells like rubbing pine needles in your hands. I get a good amount of this in the mid and I'm all for it. I love pine, I love fir, and I love camphoraceous smells, stuff like that. And the sage, same kind of sage note, aromatic, kind of woody, a little bit green, same as we get in the Eau de Parfum, but it's more concentrated in this one. So this one is woodier, definitely a little bit more green and aromatic than the Eau de Parfum. And in the dry down, I definitely get some geranium, so that's going to give it like a minty kind of floral characteristic. It doesn't go feminine in any way, shape, or form. Don't worry about that. This is still a very masculine composition. But that geranium gives it kind of like a light, watery, floral mintiness, which works really nicely in the dry down, paired with that amberwood and cedar. We get that characteristic amberwood, sweet, woody, a little bit maybe aquatic as well. And that paired with the cedar, which is gonna give it kind of like a light, woody, aromatic scent in the dry down, just works really, really well. It's awesome. So if I could put this kind of very simply, this smells a whole lot like the Eau de Parfum. It's more mature, it's less fruity, definitely woodier, definitely more focused on the pine. The amberwood is kind of turned down a little bit. It's just like a slightly more mature, definitely more concentrated version of the Eau de Parfum. I find the two scent profiles very, very similar with those kind of notable differences that I've just gone over. Again, super versatile. This maintains that youthful kind of shower jelly sweetness, but just kind of makes it a little bit more mature than what the Eau de Parfum does. I still think this is extremely versatile. Anyone can wear it. I think it's just like a better version, honestly, than the Eau de Parfum. This is Le Parfum 2025. Next, it's gonna be Elixir. Of course, the YSL Y line needed to release its version of an Elixir, and we have it right here. So in the opening, I get a lot of geranium, a little bit of oud, and even a touch of leather. In the mid, it's all about pine, juniper, and more geranium. And in the dry down, I get amberwood, cedar, and tonka. So out of the entire YSL Y fragrance line, this is the most unique, I would have to say. This opening, not what I was expecting when I first smelled this. So we get what smells to me like a very jammy, almost kind of rosy and fruity geranium, very heavy in the opening here, mixed with a touch of synthetic oud or some sort of aroma chemical made to mimic the smell of oud. And there's even a little bit of like a dark kind of oily leather in the opening. But after that opening, it does start to calm down a little bit. We get like more geranium, but the geranium becomes less rosy and fruity and jammy and more minty and more just kind of like a light, watery floral in the mid here, mixed with the pine. The pine is very noticeable in this one as well. And that juniper as well, man, that effervescent kind of camphoraceous, almost piney characteristic. Really, really nice. I absolutely love the opening in the mid of this fragrance here. Super fantastic. But still, you know, this does not lose the Y DNA. We get a lot of that amberwood in the dry down, though it's not as sweet as, for example, the EDP. I'd say the amberwood sweetness in this fragrance is kind of on the same level as the Le Parfum 2025. Also, there's a little bit of that tonka bean coming back from the original EDP in this one here. Not sweet though. It does kind of add maybe like a powdery, very slight powdery touch without going into like sweet territory. And definitely there's some cedar in this. Woody, smooth, maybe slightly aromatic, just kind of like generic wood in the bottom. but it really, really works. I gotta say, this is a really impressive fragrance here. I know it gets a lot of hate out there, especially from like niche fragrance enthusiasts, especially who look at a brand like YSL and, you know, releasing something like this in one of their main designer lines. You know, it's almost as though a lot of people feel like YSL was kind of overreaching or like trying too hard, something like that. I admit this is not the most unique scent profile ever, but like to be part of a very mainstream designer line such as Y, I'd say this is quite an impressive release and I really like it. Despite that opening, this is still a very versatile fragrance, although maybe a little bit more mature than the other two. But on the other hand, I don't think this has any age limits. Wear it if you like it. I know a lot of people do. So these are the 3 fragrances from the Y line that I just consider to be the ones worth going and spending your hard-earned money on. But which one is my favorite? This is extremely difficult. I honestly love all of them, and I can honestly think of like different situations in which I would wear each one. It was really hard to make this decision, but I gotta say, I really am liking this Elixir. It definitely has that YSL DNA. There's no mistaking that. But it's just that opening is so interesting and unexpected, especially for a line, like I said, mainstream, designer, aquatic, blue, shower jelly type fragrance line. For this fragrance to have the opening that it does, I think it's quite impressive. And I really, really like this. And the performance is exceptional. Honestly, all 3 of these have awesome performance. The performance is probably about the same. This one might have like better sillage and projection than the other 2, but like marginally so. I wouldn't let the performance be the deciding factor for you guys if you're choosing between these 3. The performance is awesome on each one. Yeah, like I said, that opening, despite its unusual nature being part of this line, I think it really works. I think it's the most interesting version of the Y line. It's different, it's unique, at least as far as a mainstream designer line of fragrances goes. But at the same time, likable, versatile, super interesting and long lasting. I really enjoy this one. This is absolutely my favorite from the line. But honestly, if you like freshness, with a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of aromatics combined in your experience, these are 3 of the very best in that genre. Mainstream designer, of course, as far as that goes. I think these are just really good value for money, especially these 2. The Elixir is quite expensive and it only comes in a 60 milliliter volume here. But yeah, the other 2 can actually be found at really good prices, especially on Joma Shop. I'm gonna leave the prices right here. Yeah, 100 ml bottles of these go for actually a pretty decent price on Joma Shop. This one here, like I said though, gonna be more expensive per milliliter. Having said all that, I really don't think you could go wrong with any of these. Test, sample, pick the one that works best for you, pick the one that you like the most, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. My favorite though, always gonna be the Elixir. Anyway guys, thank you so much for sticking around this long. What is your favorite fragrance from the YSL Y line? I know everybody has heard of it at this point. I wanna hear your favorites. Why? Why, no pun intended. And let's get the comments going down below, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around once again. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. And also, you know, dropping a like really helps the algorithm for me and my videos. So I'm gonna head out for now, guys. Until next time, keep it real.